Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Banner and Backbone. I'm Nick Perro. This is Powerful Voices. I am joined by my good friend and colleague, Zev Shalev of narrative.org. Zev, it's good to see you.
Great to see you, Nick. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are joined today on this episode of Powerful Voices with Jenn Budd, former Border Patrol, senior Border Patrol agent and expert, author, and someone who has a lot of insights and knowledge that are going to be really valuable going forward. And I wanted to bring her on to see what she has to say about everything that's happened since the administration took over, but since Renee Nicole Good's murder and the response, specifically around the response and how that's handled and the extrajudiciality of it and legalities, things. But I want to have Jenn, if you can, introduce yourself and we'll get into the discussion about, like I said, DHS and the culture. And you talked about the green light to kill that has now been turned on. And I want to talk about that as we go
Okay.
forward. So, Jenn, welcome, and please introduce yourself to the audience for us.
Well, thank you for the invite. I guess just in general, I tell you, I joined the United States Border Patrol in June of 1995. You got to remember, we did not have internet back then, not like this. And I didn't know a damn thing about it. I'm from Alabama. I didn't know anything about the southern border. I had just graduated college, was on my way to law school to be a civil rights attorney, and I joined this thing called the Border Patrol. I only served 6 years, and like most women in the Border Patrol, I was hazed in with a sexual assault. That's how you prove how strong you are, and how you become what they call one of the fierce 5%, because we only make up 5% of the force. I was stationed in Campo, California, and then I rose to the rank of a senior patrol agent, which is the highest rank you can reach before going into management. Did a little bit of stints in management, but then I resigned because I couldn't stand the corruption anymore, and I resigned in protest. And I said I couldn't do this anymore because your management was so corrupt, and I left. And I did about 14 years learning how to do custom cabinetry before I had a massive suicide attempt from not dealing with my time in the Border Patrol. And then I decided to deal with my time in the Border Patrol. And so since 2015, I've been doing this kind of work. And then I've just become like an expert because I read everything I can find about the Border Patrol, and I know so much about the past and the history. So,
Well, Jenn, thanks for being with us, Zev.
I'm just really curious, Jen. I mean, listen to your story there. There's so many questions, but the Border Patrol that you're talking about that you joined years ago is not ICE today. Obviously, it's a very the Border Patrol is a very different entity, but ICE has also become this new entity as well. How different is it today from what you when you joined it?
well, I would say that the technology has obviously changed. We didn't have that as much. Um, excuse me. And obviously didn't get paid as much money as these guys do now. Um, but the roots of where we are now existed back then.
Not really.
And it started with deterrence policies that were brought to us by Bill Clinton, and that's how we got to this point. But the culture is exactly the same. The cover up teams that I experienced, the illegal cover up teams that have existed in the Border Patrol since 1987, are exactly the same. I look at the Renee Good shooting and I see that. And then what's important for people to understand is there's three separate agencies. There's CBP, ICE, and Border Patrol. Border Patrol is located underneath CBP, but it is a separate agency. And Border Patrol has overtaken CBP in this second Trump administration. They are now the head of CBP. Our chiefs are now leading CBP as well as ICE. So we've taken over.
Did you say cover story or what is it? Cover up teams or something like that you mentioned?
Cover up teams, yeah.
Oh, what is that? Didn't know anything about that.
They're called critical incident teams. There's an HBO film out right now that talks about that. And it's a very interesting story. And it's very interesting. 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 I'm in a little bit, and it's how we exposed these teams and got them. Unfortunately, we got them disbanded. That was good out of the Border Patrol. The Biden administration agreed they were illegal and never had the right to exist. And what they did is they showed up on the scenes like the good shooting immediately and messed with the evidence and made the evidence what they wanted it to be.
Hmm.
No Border Patrol agent has ever been convicted or successfully prosecuted for killing anybody, an American or a migrant, in the over 101 years of its existence. So we've had a lot of cover ups. And before, the teams existed, we were doing it in other ways and stuff. So, yeah.
So this was instinctual. This was not a thing they were doing for this particular incident. This is an instinctual reaction to when something goes wrong. They put in their cover team and off they go, lying about the story and hiding the truth.
Yes, and you have to understand that after 9/11, the Border Patrol had heavy influence in the creation of CBP, as well did Customs as well. But we have a lot of influence in CBP. We had a lot of influence in creating ICE. Like the shooter in the good case, Agent Jonathan Ross is an ex-Border Patrol agent, and that's quite normal within it, within the ICE agency, because agents are in the Border Patrol. When you first join, you have to serve on the southern border most of the time. Occasionally, there's exceptions. And then a lot of the agents want to get more towards the center of the United States, which will require them to join ICE, and so they join ICE.
So it sounds like obviously this is a cultural thing for
Mm-hmm.
these agencies. Is how does that how would that impact, say, Jonathan Ross himself? Because I want to know a little bit more about like what possibly made this man so angry, because his response after murdering a woman, what, and I'm gonna all bleep myself on this, was fucking blank and B word, and I'm not gonna call her that. I'll bleep myself on that because that's horrendous. He murdered a woman and then
Mm-hmm.
fucking then swore at her dead or her
Yeah.
corpse. And how is this like a culture within Border Patrol? Is this the culture of Border Patrol, this sort of murderous intent or sort of extrajudicial leaning that they feel they have because there's never been a conviction?
Yes, that is absolutely what it is. Down here on the southern border, these critical incident teams have covered up crime after crime after crime. And when they do that, they become quite the celebrity within the Border Patrol. And it's always a good shoot in their minds. You have to understand too. Prior to 9/11, agents like me are called Old Patrol, and then after 9/11 is the New Patrol. And a lot of the New Patrol, especially nowadays, and certainly the people they're hiring nowadays, you have to understand that they came in with the idea of what ICE became at the time, and the whole reason why ICE was developed was to create a Muslim registry and to then go after what they considered to be criminal aliens, but to add this terrorist aspect to immigration enforcement. And what a lot of people forget is it was the immigration agents who allowed those terrorists into the country in the first place, and they've never apologized for it. And so, and
Yeah.
in fact, a year after the 9/11 attacks, when they were dead, back then the agency was called Immigration Naturalization Service, which is what I was under. They actually, a year after the event, they actually mailed them renewals of their visas so they could stay in the country. That's how bad the agency was.
Wow.
And Border Patrol was underneath INS. And so what you have to understand about this agent is he's grown up after probably 9/11. He has all that in his frame of mind. At the same time, what you need to understand is in probably the last decade more so is, well, right after 9/11, they changed the hiring practices and they started really trying to focus on people who were right wing Christians, fundamentalist, And they were really focusing on wanting people who had that right-wing ideology. Then we go to like probably about the last decade, what we see down here on the southern border are a lot of Christian churches that have popped up that cater to Border Patrol agents and tell them that they are heroes. But what you have to understand is a lot of Border Patrol agents are hired with crimes in their background as bad as sexual assault. A lot of the Border Patrol has hired cartel members. The Border Patrol has hired undocumented people who have risen to the ranks higher than I was, a supervisor position, and been there for 13 years. And a lot of the agents can barely, quite honestly, even read and write, and they don't understand a lot of. I was very shocked because I had a 4-year degree, just the absolute inability to understand law. And basically down here, it's just kind of they cross, you catch them. It's about beating ass, pretty much is what it's about.
I'm just blown
And
away
these,
by this, you know?
and oh yeah, I've been screaming about this for years, and I'm so happy people are finally seeing it. But it's like, and like I said, the sexual assaults against the women, if they're doing that to their own female agents, what do you think they're doing to migrants and children? But these churches down here, they recognize that a lot of the agents are criminal themselves. And what they tell them, they quote Isaiah 6:8. And that is actually a video that Chief Bovino, the one who's running the raids in the cities, just put out as a video where he has an agent quoting Isaiah 6:8. And essentially, what happens in Isaiah 6:8 is he goes to the Lord, to God, this Christian out of the Bible, and he says, I want to serve you, but I'm not worthy enough. And a cherub comes and cleanses his sins with a hot coal to his lips, and so now he's worthy. So they feel if they go to these churches and then they become worthy. But at the same time, he says to God, what is it that you need of me? And God says, I need you basically to lay waste to this city that is sinful, that is full of sin. And he says, I need you to close your eyes and close your ears and look the other way at what is required of you. And so they feel that, yeah, they're corrupt. And this is how they see Donald Trump. And this is why they're so infatuated with Donald Trump is, yes, he's sinful. He's fallen. He's done so many. But at the same time, he's serving God and doing what we need to do. And a lot of the agents in this agency really believe this. And at the same time, this all wraps in. You got to understand that after 9/11, the time that these men and women, but mostly men, are going through high school, at the time they're in high school, they're attending Turning Point USA rallies at their high schools. And Charlie Kirk came to these churches down here and told them, you're going to be asked to do things that you wouldn't normally do. I'm throwing stuff at my dog to make her not bark. And Charlie Kirk said to them, we will get rid of the illegal problem, the undocumented people, if we can stomach it. Those were his words. That's how bad it was supposed to be. Then, and then he said, the real problem we have are the people who are here legally and the people who don't agree with us. And so then you fast forward to Department of Homeland Security and the president putting out that national security document in an executive order stating now that domestic terrorists are people who have, in their words, extreme views on gender, so LGBTQ, and also extreme views on migration. So Ms. Good met 2 of those. She had a gay sticker on the back, even if the guy didn't identify with her as that. And you notice when he walks past her, he's not even listening to her. And he's so angry. He's so angry. And that is the training and that is the atmosphere that these agents are working in. And they believe that their cause, according to even the head of CBP, which is former Chief Rodney Scott, who's one of the most corrupt agents we've ever had, they really believe this stuff, and they believe that they are turning this nation back to a Christian nation, and that everything will be great once they get rid of all these undocumented people and so forth. They know that the vast majority of the people they're arresting are not criminals. They know that the vast majority of people that they arrest on the southern border, only about maybe 1% are actual violent criminals that have records and stuff. And in fact, the agents since 2018, and at least in the Border Patrol, as a population, they commit more violent crimes every year, as I've been tracking it since 2018. They commit more violent crimes as a population than the people they are arresting.
Isn't that interesting? So you're saying that they approached the car knowing the identity of Renee Good? Do you think that they were aware of who she was in terms of the surveillance capability that they have? They now have so much technology at their disposal. They've got these facial recognition devices. They've got this huge Palantir system that gives them all this profiling around every person that's there. Do you think that they might have known who they were approaching, and maybe that was the anger that they were approaching the car with?
They could have. We don't know that, because you notice every time they approach people, they're putting their cameras in their face, and their government camera phones have a link to that technology, that platform, so they can find people right away. And we don't know what the before the video starts. We don't know, other than the agents were saying that she was following them around all day. But they also lie, as we've seen. They lie about everything. So we don't know if they know that. But what I am saying from what I've seen is, as they get out of the car, they're going to look at that woman and the fact that she has a partner and probably assume they're gay. But then they also see the sticker on the back. But at the same time, they're harassing them. And the green light that I was talking about is this national security executive order that's listed all these people. So that memo came out, or that, excuse me, executive order came out September 25th of last year. And then you look at when Mary Mar Martinez, the woman in Chicago who was shot 5 times by an ICE agent, and then they had to drop the charges against her because she did not ram them. They rammed her. She did have a gun, but she had a license to carry a gun, and it was in her purse. She didn't draw it on them. And so they lied about all that. So within weeks of that, I want to say within 2 weeks of that executive order coming out, labeling people who are opposed to what they're doing as domestic terrorists, then they start shooting the people who are trying to warn neighbors about what is going on. So now following ICE, honking your horn, blowing whistles can now get you shot. And now we fast forward to, we see, and they've done it to a couple other people as well, but more so now we see that this happens to Miss Good. So what he has in his mind is she's a domestic terrorist. Whether he truly believes that or not, they've been given the green light to see her as that.
We've really seen a shift in the last 24 hours here between what they were saying on last week, which was, excuse me, domestic terrorism, and this woman was ramming them, accelerating and ramming these officers. Now Donald Trump is saying that they were disrespectful to these agents, because that's the new excuse that they've come up with, as if it was okay to shoot someone in the face 3 times if you're being disrespectful to them. That's the president really blessing that thinking, and what you're describing as well, this domestic terrorism charge, which he's putting on almost anyone who doesn't agree with him or comes from a different background, is really kind of terrifying in the context of the fact that they've got millions and millions of dollars being poured into this agency. This agency is being supersized.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are all in. They are all in for this. And I think one of the most important things that people need to understand is that as they move from LA to Chicago to Minneapolis, New Orleans, Charlotte, these are cities where the Republicans think that they're going to have a hard time holding on to votes. And so what I hope I'm wrong, but what I anticipate is that when it comes voting season, when the midterms come, they will, not only that they're making people of color fearful to go out and vote, But at the same time, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see, some people like to go vote in person, or in some states you need to go do that. I don't, I'm in California and we can vote by mail, but you're going to see them coming up to people standing in lines going, I don't think you're a citizen. I don't think you're a citizen.
Mm.
Now, the way you determine somebody's, as they say it in Border Patrol Academy, their alienage of what country they're from, is you walk up to them and you ask them, and you decide as an agent whether you believe them or not. That's all there is to it. There's no ID really, other than a passport, but those, all documents can be faked. And you see a lot of agents say, oh, those are fake and this and that, even though they're not fake. So there's no real way to tell somebody's citizenship other than talking to them. And it's an agent's judgment of that. And it's done usually right on the spot. But what they've started to do differently is they go, like, Zev, I see you walking down the street, and let's say you're a person of color, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to stop and talk to you. I'm not even going to ask your citizenship. I feel threatened by all these people blowing whistles around me. I'm going to put you in handcuffs and throw you in my car, and I'm going to drive you probably anywhere from 2 to 10 miles away. And then I will determine your citizenship.
Mm.
That is actually, I'm not an attorney, but I've been told by attorneys recently in a lot of interviews I've been doing that kind of violates the, are you necessarily arrested or not? And so then if they find you're a citizen, then you kick them out. There's even a video of them throwing some guy's documents at him, his IDs, and
Really?
stuff, because they're so mad that he's actually a citizen. And so they will do that. Well, by the time that happens, oh, the voting booths are closed. Well, that's just too bad, isn't it? I think it'll be worse, obviously, once we get towards 2028, if there even is an election, and I doubt there will be.
Yeah. So I live in Arkansas, where it's less announced when ICE shows up, but it happens quite a lot. Arkansas is one of the higher rates per capita. I think we have like the third or fourth highest rate of arrests related to ICE basically at facilities, because Arkansas just lets
they cooperate.
Sheriffs, and they cooperate. They left sheriffs and police officers go, are you a citizen? No? Okay, well, you're now in ICE's hands. And they just ship them over. Benton County has the highest the third highest in the country of arrests. It's fucking ridiculous. What can we do? What is a suggestion from you on things that we can do when we come to voting season? Because we have to prepare well ahead of time to create safety networks, to create systems of support. What do we do? What is the best thing that, in your mind, that we could do as a community of citizens to ensure that people who don't look like us necessarily, or even people who look like you may stand out in a location, or people who look like me at times with big earrings in and painted fingernails. And what do we do to make others safe while we're in a voting booth or in the line to the voting booths? And how do we protect our communities without risk? There's going to be a risk of violence, but how do we do it without inciting violence?
Well, I think one of the main things is we all need to be extremely active in our city councils and our county boards and so forth. And we need to start addressing this right now. We're afraid that they're going to come and take us out of line when we try and vote. And we're afraid that there's going to be violence. The issue is, for me, as far as my understanding is that voting is a state's rights issue. So your local police officers and your sheriffs should be protecting the voters. ICE, but the problem is your people are taking money from them. I would also start working on finding out how much money they're taking. One of the problems that I see is a lot of our local police and sheriffs are trained by DHS. DHS offers grants. The only reason why these little podunk towns, and I can say this as an Alabamian, I know Arkansas, these little podunk towns in Arkansas are dressed like they're going to Fallujah is because they're taking federal money. And so you want to try and break that relationship. You also want to tell them, and I would flat out flat out tell your cops, like, these guys aren't cops. They're not real cops. They're not peace officers. Immigration agents are not peace officers. They do not have the right to stop you for vehicle infractions, for traffic infractions. They can stop you if they see you committing a felony in front of them. But other than that, they can't stop you unless they suspect you of being an undocumented immigrant, and usually that's why they're going after people of color. So you have to start laying the seeds and letting your people there who are your leaders know, we're not going to tolerate this. We're not going to let this happen.
It doesn't necessarily help you at the end of the day. I mean, these
It
guys still
doesn't.
have a lot of authority now in these states. You've got the federal government, the president saying you've got immunity, unqualified immunity for these people. Christine Noem is out there denying the reality that we're seeing. And it's what bothers me so much is this permission structure. We're allowing people to commit violent acts only for one part of the political spectrum. It's not like you can be on the left and do these acts. You can only commit these violent acts if you're doing it for Donald Trump.
Yeah. And another thing I would suggest, because I always tell people, obviously, well, I'm saying now that all forms of resistance are needed. Obviously, I always have to recommend no violence and so forth. But one of the things that you notice when you watch these videos is that ICE backs down when they feel overwhelmed, when there's too many people. And I think when it comes to voting day, I think all of us who either vote by mail or have already voted, or they look like me and it's not going to be a problem or whatever, then you stay there. You stay there all day and you create protection around them. 5 deep, 10 deep, whatever it is, and you surround that line and you do not allow them to get to them. They can't take all of us, and we are way, way, way more than they are. They just want you to think that they are bigger than they are. They're not. They'll probably bring in the military. I don't know what's going to happen with that. We have seen the military recently say no to the Greenland invasion, but yes to the Venezuelan invasion. I don't know what they're going to say. I think they're going to have a hard time. Some people will obviously go for it, and that's been a problem in that presidents in the past on both sides have been allowing the Border Patrol to train with the military. So they're getting their ideology set into the military. A lot of agents now are former military. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with the military, but my suggestion is that after you vote, you stay. You stay the whole day as much as you can. And if you're not going to vote or you've already voted, you go down there and you help guard and protect your local citizens that are also trying to vote.
There was
Sorry,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Zev.
No, you go.
I was going to ask quickly about the training portion of it, because one of the things that I've covered previously with Melissa Corrigan, who's another veteran, she's a Navy vet, and we've talked a lot about transition services for veterans. There's or for service members. There's the SkillBridge program for transitioning service members who are still on active duty during the last 180 days of their service contract. And we found that there is a policy that for the first time ever, the military is pushing DHS and ICE specifically as a location that you can go during your SkillBridge program. Is this something that you have any experience knowing about, and like how many active duty service members possibly try this? Is this something that they really want? Because this brings culture from the military and training into ICE, and then they can be recalled back into the military because they're still on active duty service, and they could just re-up their contract after, say, 179 days of just going, I'm going to get ICE training on how to kill somebody in with a luxury. Are there rules that you know of on the ICE or DHS side that is supposed to prohibit the actions of what active service members can and should be doing? Because there are on the military side, on the DoD side, but I don't know if ICE is encouraging them to do things that they know they shouldn't be.
Um, yeah, ICE will encourage them to do everything. And I would say, without saying too much, I know for a fact, I mean, it's been over the years, but especially right now, the DOD is working with ICE in their facilities and working with migrants and stuff that they shouldn't be doing, that we're going to be very embarrassed about one day. And the DOD is very much on board with all of this. The DOD is the one back in 1994 that developed the deterrence policies that sent over 80,000 migrants to their deaths out here instead of just, processing people. I don't know much about the programs that they have, but I do know that since I left the agency, a whole lot of militaries in there. I mean, upwards of well over probably, I think I heard a chief the other day saying like, I want to say 37, 38% of their agency now is former military. And you can tell who is former military because they're allowed to wear the brown boots versus agents like me who were just border patrol. We only wear black boots.
Oh, interesting.
It's a big
Interesting.
give. And also what I noticed too when I left the agency, which was, I was like, why are they wearing all this camo?
Mm.
I mean, it just seemed really weird. And I could tell their operations and how they view the border. I mean, I used to walk up and down the border road all the time and drive up and down it, no problem. Most of the time without a vest, although that I don't recommend that. But and these agents today, they treat the migrants as enemy combatants.
Really?
So there's a
Mm.
lot of training that they've had in Iraq and Afghanistan that is filtered into the Border Patrol specifically, but also into ICE and CBP. And then at the same time, you see the Border Patrol has tried to steal a lot of the military's valor. So now you'll see when they go on, we usually call it, when you have to go somewhere and work for a month, we would call that a detail, but now they call it a tour. So they've even adopted their vocabulary and they get medals and stuff of where they went and all this. It's just the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. And you'll see our chiefs walking around in military style fatigues, even though we are not the military, we are a civilian law enforcement agency. So the constant blurring of the military with civilian policing is constant down here. And so you're going to see it in your cities and it's going to confuse you. But also, as well as like peace officer authority, which is our sheriffs, FBI, our police department, they have what's called peace officer authority. And Border Patrol, CBP, and ICE have immigration authority. They're supposed to have limited authority, but under the terror mission, which they added after 9/11, then they've kind of just blended all this stuff together. And it's very confusing and nobody's really fighting it in the courts.
One more quick question on this before Zev, then I'll let you take some questions here. I'm a prior Army human intelligence collector. I understand that I know where some of the forts are and bases, and I know what some of the personnel distributions look like on some of those bases based on my prior experience of where units are located. Have you or did you or do you know of any time that a U.S. Army interrogator has been used on a person who has been detained by ICE within our country's borders? Or can you not say?
I don't know of that. I don't
Okay.
know of that. But if you tell me that happens, I would probably be like, yeah, sure. So, I mean, because they're just doing honestly, whatever they want right now. And they're absolutely violating the Constitution and all the laws. They don't care.
Okay. I say that I asked that question because it is illegal for interrogators within the military to act within U.S. borders on persons of U.S. status because we are an external force. The military, especially interrogators, are for enemies of the state outside the U.S. counterintelligence is for inside the US. There's a very subtle difference, but it's highly illegal for an interrogator to interrogate somebody in the US. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were doing it in some of
Yeah.
these bases, especially in Texas, because I've heard of some locations that are partnering with DHS and ICE for detention centers. But also the testing scares me, or in terms of what they may be doing for medical testing or just abuse towards these individuals.
I think the other thing that scares me too is I've noticed that as Bovino goes around to these different Democratic cities in Chicago and stuff, they're actually staying on military bases. So that's no bueno right there. That's really bad. Not that I don't, I respect the military and everything, but the fact that immigration is just so like with them is just not good. It's not good.
You've described a force here that is, blessed by their local churches, their priests or whatever, to do whatever they want in the name of God. You've also described people who are treating their targets as enemy combatants, although these are people who are trying to cross over illegally, except that this force is now turned inwards into America. It's now facing, it's facing American civilians on a day-to-day basis. And if they're so used to treating people like enemy combatants, then it's no surprise that they approach Renee Good's car in that way, because that is not the way any officer would normally, any law-abiding officer would approach a car for their own safety and for anyone else's safety. They wouldn't do that. But in this case, they approached it like they were hunting down an enemy. It looked like that. And you had Renee Good with her hands visible at all times, obviously not holding a weapon, deconflicting the situation as much as she could. I mean, they're saying, I'm not mad at you, dude. And then they shoot her. So if you just take this, multiply it now by the amount of money and size of this force that's going to be growing, the chances of this happening again are quite high.
And the fact that they've lowered the standards. I mean, even the Border Patrol. So the one thing that the Border Patrol had over the other two agencies is it was very physically demanding. But I mean, even after I graduated the academy, they started dropping the requirements, at least on the physical requirements. And I mean, now these people can basically walk like 1.5 miles and become a Border Patrol agent. And I mean, the time that they are in the academy, they've cut in half, and the academy rates were horrible to begin with. When I look at how they approach that vehicle, it's obvious to me they don't see her as a real threat. They just walk up and start grabbing in. They're not, taking cover or anything. They're like, they're going to show what it is. What I see is they're going to teach them a lesson is what I see. And when I watch Agent Ross walk around, he's supposedly a firearms instructor. He has over 10 years in Border Patrol and ICE. And so he has a lot of training. And he actually teaches agents proper technique with guns and how to walk around vehicles and be around them. So when I see him go to the back of the vehicle and he's right up against the bumper, videoing things, well, that's number one. That's a problem. He's violating, procedure by standing behind the vehicle so close. Then he goes around the other side and he's practically like right up against the hood as he's walking. So that's number two. And then I don't see him. Yeah, he's in front of the vehicle when he crosses, but when he actually shoots, it looks, because he's right-handed. That's the other thing I saw. He's carrying his phone in his right hand and his gun is on his right hip. He only switches once he decides he's going to draw down on her, and that's when he's right in front of her. And he's actually just to the outside of the fender and actually he reaches over like this to shoot and kind of leans into the car and over the hood, but he's still kind of right on that corner. He's not actually in front, and her wheels are turned. And you see the first bullet goes in the very corner of her driver's side front window. So that's why the bullet is there. And maybe someday we'll see the trajectory, but I think that's what you're going to see is where he's standing. He's actually right at the corner of the driver's side in the front and leans over to get that shot. And then the next two shots are through the window, apparently, is what I saw.
Yeah, he really reached over. There's no doubt. And it was
Yeah,
about a
and
foot
the
and a
other
half
thing,
away.
yeah, the other bad shoot, the problem with it is that, did you see his partner was right there at the window, reaching in, trying to get her out when he fires that first bullet, and his partner goes like this with his hand, almost like he got a shrapnel hit.
Wow.
And he looks at Rod like, "What the fuck, dude?" You know, kind of think. Sorry, you can bleep that
Nope,
out.
we don't
But
we don't blurb things out here.
that's the impression I got. And then on top of it, it's a bad shoot because since 2013, the Police Executive Research Forum report came out telling Border Patrol, you keep allowing your agents to put themselves in these situations, and it causes anxiety. It causes fear. You know, as soon as she saw him draw down on her is when she started hitting the gas to get the hell out of there. And so he is escalating the violence in that moment. He caused that to happen. And it just, and the reason why you don't shoot at people in vehicles unless you absolutely have no other choice is because of what happened. So her foot probably hit the accelerator as she's losing control of her body, and then she speeds off down the thing because she can't control herself and she can't control the car.
Right.
God only knows who else she could have hit. And the truth is, as she's turning to the right, once he hits her, she could have let go of the steering wheel and it could have snapped back and she could have hit him. I mean, it's just ridiculous what that
so
man
unsafe. And the disrespect, of course, is not, the president keeps talking about they were disrespectful to the officers and the agents. I mean, the disrespect to Renee Good is remarkable. They just surrounded her with masks, grabbed her handle of the door, tried to open the door forcefully, telling her to get out, circling the car. I mean, this is a very threatening situation for anybody. So you can see why she would try and get away from that situation. And even so, she was reversing. I mean, there was she was so clearly trying to avoid any conflict, and they were just surrounding her with this tension. The other thing that's really striking. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. My opinion of that, knowing Border Patrol agents, knowing CBP and ICE agents, is that they really were tired of these women.
Mm-hmm.
However long that they were following them, blowing their whistles and this and that. And especially her wife, when she was like, "Go eat a sandwich or go have a lunch, big boy," and this and that. And he took offense to that. And there's nothing that a lot of these Border Patrol agents hate more than undocumented immigrants. It's women. They really do not like women. And that's why we're hazed like we are and this and that. And you have a specific role when you're in these agencies, and to cross that role and to cross these men, forget about it. So yeah, I think they were teaching her a lesson. And if you watch that HBO documentary, Critical Incident, it's also on Amazon Prime if you have that I'm in, this case from 2010, the reason why they killed this man, Anastasio Hernandez Rojas, they beat him to death and tased him to death. And there was video of that too, and they still got away with it. Was because he demanded that they take him to a doctor after they injured his foot where he had previous surgery. And he said, "No, don't put me back in Mexico." And they were trying to shove him across, and he didn't want to go. They beat him because they thought he was an uppity migrant, and they were teaching him a lesson. And I feel that that's what they did to these women. That's what I see when I look at that. And the saddest thing about the structure of all this and the film, so the killing of Anastasio happened in 2010, and the chief at that time who led the cover-up was Chief Rodney Scott. He is now the commissioner of CBP.
Oh, wow. That is terrifying.
Yeah.
I've got, Nick, can I just throw in one more question here?
Oh, absolutely.
It ties to all of this. There is this fundraiser that was set up on Give, Send, Go. A company, by the way, that's not your typical American company that does these sort of things. I think it's run out of China. But it's also, it's raising money for the agent who killed Renee Good. So he's the Jonathan Ross, right? And
Mhm.
in there's this unusual line where they describe the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Fry, who told them to get the fuck out of Minneapolis. It says in parentheses, it says the mayor who is Jewish. And then, no one really understands the context of why they would put that who is Jewish in there. But it's certainly, you talk about the anti-LGBTQ element. You talk about the fact that they view immigrants as being enemy combatants. They even use the word parasites in this
Yep.
fundraiser as well, referring to immigrants. And there's the other thing about it is they talk about a purge in all these cities, like almost like this very Nazi-like language that's being used. It sounds to me like this is kind of the culture. This is the culture, that it's all these things.
Yeah, and in the Border Patrol, we have a different word for the migrants, the undocumented migrants. A lot of times we call them illegals, but we have a different word because, as you've seen, a lot of our agents are Latino. And so the white agents do not want to call them the typical racist terms that we say in America. And so we have our own, and it's TONK, TONK or TONC. And we're told to lie to people if they hear us saying it, that people who are not, within the agency, we're told to say, oh, it means temporarily out of native country or true origin not known. And that's a lie. The truth is, it is the sound our flashlights make when we hit them in the head.
Oh, gosh.
That's what we call them. And the Latino agents regularly use this. There's a part in my book, wrote about my time in the Border Patrol, a part in my book where I'm arguing with my Latino classmate who's upset because he tells me that his parents came here undocumented. And I said, oh, your parents are Tonks. And he's like, wow, that's so racist. And I'm like, you use this word every day. What are you talking about? And he was like, oh, it's different back then. And I'm like, oh, for God's sakes. And I mean, I knew when I was saying that it was racist. But yeah, they justify that somehow. I would say the person who's put up this GoFundMe or whatever it is that you're talking about.
It's called, yeah.
There's also a GoFundMe that's at
There is a couple of
$500,000
GoFundMes
too.
I've seen too. What's interesting to me is that this agent is not going to be out any money. His union attorneys are going to provide his defense for him. And even if he is convicted, Donald Trump, if he's still president, is probably going to pardon him and will probably give him an award and all these other things. There's no reason to give this man any money. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's why the dog whistle is so, the Jewish dog whistle. It seems to me like it's a real rallying cry for people to fund whatever it is they're funding through these GoFundMes. Yeah, but it's basically funding a what feels to me like a Gestapo. Basically, I mean, I might be overreaching here.
It is. No, you're not overreaching because I mean, they have very new camp in I want to say it's Montana or something like that. These big giant camps, warehouses that they're making, they've already had 2 deaths in them. So I mean, you might as well call them death camps because that's what's happening. We've had more deaths in ICE custody than we have ever had in the first year of the second administration for Donald Trump. So, I mean, I guess I'm not surprised that they put out anti-Semitic stuff because in the Border Patrol, after George W. Bush got elected, he allowed them to have chaplains. So we have chaplains in the Border Patrol, so agents can act as a chaplain, but we don't have imams and we don't have rabbis. So, yeah.
Not a lot of Jews in the force?
I guess not. I don't recall. Well, the one person that I met that I knew was Jewish. He was my trainee and he was waiting to go to law school. I think he went to George Mason. He's a smart kid. The thing he said to me as he was leaving and turning in his badge and stuff, he didn't even make it out of his post-academy training. He said, Miss Bud, you're way too smart for this. You need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah. And you did.
Well, you did.
Yeah.
So with some of the framing that you put in and what you've told us about legality and what ICE say can and can't do, going back to the Renee Good murder this week or this past week, I just want some, I guess, maybe yes or no questions real quick on this is, did the ICE officers have legal jurisdiction to apprehend someone who is committing possibly just a vehicular road violation for like blocking the road?
No, and I know you told me yes or no, but I just want to
No,
qualify
please
that
explain. Yeah.
with the fact that I was listening to, I think that it was the Attorney General of that state, and she said when you actually look at it, she was not blocking it, and she waved other cars through. They were allowed to go around. ICE is going to say you're preventing us from you're interfering with our duties, and that's why we did it. She was not. She was waving them through. They chose to stop, and they chose to address her and confront her.
Okay. Um, Thank you for that answer. And even if they had justification to, say, take her out of the vehicle, is it standard practice to shoot someone first or to or is it supposed to be standard practice to de-escalate? For if it's someone who doesn't look in their mind like a migrant or an illegal alien. And I hate that word, but like, or that phrase, but in their mind, if they don't look illegal, would they have any legal justification to shoot this woman?
No. And they don't have any justification to shoot her if they think she's committing a crime, unless they think that their lives or someone around them's lives are in danger. That is the only justification for using lethal force. Only.
Okay. And I ask these things knowing those answers and knowing the answers, especially after everything we've talked about. Um, and I do have one final question on this because there were 3 shots fired.
Yes.
And for someone who is a firearms instructor, that it's reported that Agent Ross was, knowing that he would know how to handle himself in a situation, how to position himself in a situation like this, possibly to maintain best footing, because he anchored himself in his footing. He anchored himself on the vehicle. I've trained in firearms, so I saw what he was doing almost right away. He put himself into a good position.
Yep.
Not, and this would be speculate. This is a speculative question. Do you think it may have been in his intent to murder both Renee and her spouse?
I think in that moment, I feel that his intent was to murder Renee. I believe that was his intent. And I will say, I have not done Border Patrol firearms training in a long, long time. It was probably the most thorough training we had in the academy, like a lot of firearms training.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the Border Patrol instructors, especially if you spend all your time doing that, are really, really, really good at firearms training. And I was always taught to do what they call a double tap, and where you fire off 2 rounds and then you reassess. I can't say if they're still teaching them that. But a lot of times what I see in all the different cases that I've studied is agents either fire 1 to 2 rounds, or they'll completely empty their guns. It seems like he was very much in control when he was doing this, and he knew exactly how many rounds, especially when you see that last one where he literally is reaching in to the window to put another one in her head. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the impression, watching him walk away, also knowing his background, that he'd had this other incident earlier on in Minneapolis where he was dragged by a car. It almost feels, that they sent him in there to exact revenge on what happened to him. That it was sort of, they knew he would be obviously triggered by an event which would be kind of traumatic. And to have that person of all people sent in to confront this situation, because he came in from outside, like it wasn't there at that moment. He drove in.
Yeah.
What would go behind? Why would they send him?
I'm not 100% sure that he experienced being drugged 6 months ago, because the unless I haven't seen the actual picture, the picture that DHS put out, do they not have the face blurred on the agent?
They might have. I just saw the video. I didn't actually see I saw the video of the incident, which they said was him, but maybe it wasn't him. Who knows? Maybe it was just
I
manufactured.
couldn't tell if that was him. The person that was, all I saw was the picture in the hospital bed.
Mm.
And the man in the hospital bed looked to be pretty fit to me. When I look at this agent, he looks pretty porky to me.
Mhm.
And I don't say that to be mean. I'm a porky woman. I don't say that to be mean, but it just doesn't really look like him. And you should question everything these people put out, everything. And so I'm not sure that that's him. And then second, I would say I have been hit and drugged before. It can be quite traumatic, and he should have had time off.
Mhm.
He should have had psychological evaluations. He should have been required to go and see a therapist. I don't know if any of that stuff was done. 6 months, if he's already been drugged, seems kind of fast to come back to this type of what they're doing, these raids, which are getting more and more violent. They're very stressful and chaotic. And so I would not put an agent like that. The other thing I think needs to happen is he needs to be drug and alcohol tested. He should have been.
Mm.
They'll keep him away from investigators for a minimum of 72 hours and only let his union attorneys talk to him and his fellow agents. So even down here, when you get into a shooting or something, they will not allow you to talk to the police for 72 hours. And that's so that they could see what the evidence is as the evidence is coming out, and they can figure out how they're going to get their game plan going on, quite frankly. And that's something that's not afforded to regular citizens at all.
No.
Yeah, you're allowed to go hide away. They whisked him away. They actually sent other agents to his house to gather up stuff for him. So they will treat him. You notice they said he was in the hospital and this and that. That's the other thing. Whether they're actually injured or not, they'll take him to the hospital to say that they are. So they're creating a story the whole time. And then the very first thing they do in these cover-ups is they get in the press and they start that narrative, and they set that narrative immediately.
Right.
And as soon as they say that, that's all their sycophants on Fox News need. That's the only thing that they will hear is,
Yeah.
oh, she tried to run him over. Donald Trump says she flat out ran him over and drug him down the road and this and that. So, yeah, they won't do any drug tests or alcohol tests on him. When you go on these details, it's as they say, what happens on detail stays on detail. You spend most of your time drunk and doing stuff like that.
You said you spend most of your time drunk doing that? Is that really what goes on? They're just
Oh,
drinking?
yeah. I did a detail in Indio. It was the bloodiest detail I ever saw. My best friend, we were drinking every night to deal with that stuff. Yeah. Big time drinking. Big time.
Which is very different from the military. In when you are deployed on mission in the military, you're under what's called General Order Number 1, which means no sex, no alcohol. And that's
Oh, no.
prevent
They were
babies
even, they
from
cut,
being made and
go ahead.
people from shooting guns off when you're drunk.
Well, they actually arrested at least one agent who left the Broadview ICE facility in Chicago after duty, came out and was totally wasted. They're drinking inside the facilities.
Wow. And you've also indicated maybe sexual assaults are happening. All sorts of things
Oh,
might be
they're
happening.
definitely happening. Definitely happening.
And bribes, they're being bribed by people to let them go.
And
Is that-
they will steal their money from them. They will steal, everything from them. I'll tell you another trick. There's a thing in the Border Patrol they call the Mexican heart attack, and I'm sure it's in ICE too. So we have a lot of deaths that happen in custody where we say, oh, they were found in medical distress. And then there's really no information given afterwards. And what it is there's cameras in a lot of the male agents when they want to teach a lesson, as we would say. They stand with their back in front of the camera so you can't see. And the migrant has his hands handcuffed so he can't respond, and they put pressure on their jugular until they pass out, and then they bring them to, and then they do it again and make them pass out. It's to teach people a lesson. And sometimes they don't revive them. So.
And you're talking about murder in some cases.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So
absolutely.
maybe is that the reason this guy could walk into, that you would know, but he'd shoot this woman 3 times and then walk away, looking like it was just another day in the ballpark, like just okay, bye, let's roll up, everybody, we just did our job.
So,
Yeah.
and on that question, will all the other officers that were involved in this situation, will any of them be questioned in any way by CBP or ICE for their actions? Or say, sorry, as my dog goes off as the doorbell rang. As say, driving away from the scene of a murder after committing murder is in itself
they do that all
a crime.
They do that all the time. There was a shooting up here in Campo, my old station area. 3 agents put themselves right in front of a car. They were chasing, got out, and the driver was still in the car. They put themselves in front of the car, and as soon as he went to try and get around him, they filled him full of lead. All the agents left before even the sheriff showed up. They went back to my old station down on the border, which is now, now it's housing military, but at the time it was just kind of a processing center. And they sat around and they said, of course, we didn't talk about what happened because we don't want to, come on. They sit around and they talk about what happened. So they're all going to get their story straight, and every single agent will back exactly whatever story they're told to come up with. So.
Wow, this is terrifying. You've got these rabid extremists, basically, with racist undertones who think of, call them tongs, but parasites is the other word that they've been used. They're anti-Semitic. They are killing or certainly injuring with impunity here. They've got no judicial oversight. Absolutely no one is in any way questioning what's going on or even investigating what's going on. There's no way to appeal what they're doing. There's no way to question what they're doing. They're surging thousands of officers or agents into these cities that are much, the 2,000 or 5,000 in Minneapolis, that's much bigger than the police force there. So they take over the entire city, and they're lawless.
And they will destroy your economies. So what happens down here on the southern border is, as we've militarized the southern border, the towns on both sides of the border are the businesses are dead because nobody wants to come here. Nobody wants to go down there. And that's what you're seeing happen in your cities is it'll start with the immigrants having to close down their businesses. That's another way to get at the immigrants and to treat them like crap. But eventually it closes all the businesses down. It's horrible. It's horrible for business. So, yeah.
This has been such an illuminating discussion.
We've been screaming down here on the border for so long, and it's like now y'all finally see it. We're like, yeah!
I wish I had been doing this years ago. It's the same thing
we see every day down here. Every day.
Yeah, I wish I had been seeing this and talking about this years ago so that I could put my voice into the discussion because, God, this is fucking awful. Like, this is awful.
When people say what kind of people get into the agency, I think after 9/11, somebody like me couldn't have gotten into the agency. And I'll be honest with you. I think the only reason why I was hired is whoever was doing the hiring, my recruiter, thought I was cute. That's usually how women get in there. And a lot of these agents, not talking about the new recruiting, but a lot of these agents, they cannot get into the military and they cannot get in police forces. And when they get in here, they're automatically in training. You get over $50,000 a year starting, and you get healthcare and all this other stuff, the status of the badge and all this other stuff. And I think, now anybody who's looking at what's going on and volunteering for that job, obviously there's a serious problem with you if you think that this is okay.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. Like if you know somebody in your family who's now joining ICE or CBP or Border Patrol or any of them, ask them outright what their thoughts are on people. Like ask them, confront them for it because it's not good behavior.
One more thing as well is, in police departments, you're required to take a psychological exam. You're not required to in the immigration agencies.
Wow.
That's scary. And with that, I think we're going to shift to close the conversation here because we've been just over an hour and I want to respect everyone's time here. We have nearly 700 people watching us on Substack. We have others watching us on YouTube and Twitch. Jenn, where can people find you and support the work and the writing that you're doing and the advocacy that you're promoting, so that we can get more of this information and this really critical information out there?
So my main platform is on Substack, and that's called Borderland Talk. And then I also just recently joined back Blue Sky. I'm not really fond of social media. It aggravates me, but I am on Blue Sky but Substack and Blue Sky. So
Okay, awesome.
And the book is called Against the Wall.
My book is called Against the Wall: My Journey from Border Patrol Agent to Immigrant Rights Activist. Yeah.
Sounds like a must read.
It's been out for 3.5 years. So, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think we're going to, someone dropped a link for it into the chat. Thank you to whoever you are, Karen, for dropping that in. I appreciate it. I will include a link to Jenn's book in the post show notes so that anyone can go try and easily find it, because it's important we support each other. And then shifting over to you, Zev, real quick. How can people support the work that you're doing too? Thank you for coming on and co-hosting with me.
Thank you so much.
I truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to meet you, Jenn, as well. You really are heroic in going against this force and revealing all the details that they have inside. It's quite stunning to hear you talk about it. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. Everyone can find me at narrative.org, NARATIV.org. It's also a Substack. What I've been doing lately is covering this murder of Renee Good in every angle possible. Got another story coming out about that later on today. But I've also just published The Greatest Heist, Book 2, Chapter 7, which looks at the actual crime that Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and many others made happen in 2008 when they pumped and dumped the entire American economy in the 2008 crash. I start explaining in this chapter exactly the mechanism that they used, showing exactly how Donald Trump's casinos were packaged into a mortgage-backed security fund, and that Jeffrey Epstein held the keys to that fund and then ultimately protected it as they crashed the entire market around them. So it's an interesting read. I highly recommend The Greatest Heist, Book 2, and it's all on narrative.org.
Yeah, okay. I highly recommend Zev's work. So Jenn, I'm so glad I got to introduce you to Zev. Zev, I'm glad I got to introduce you to Jenn today. Jenn, I would like to invite you back for another show to discuss more with Dean Blundell as well, and maybe some of my other co-hosts and colleagues, because I know there's a lot of us with a lot of questions, and you're an expert. And the truth holds power, and the more we know, the more we can act on it. So thank you, Zev. Thank you also so much for coming. I appreciate you being on with me. I always enjoy getting to host with you and have these discussions. And then finally, come support Banner and Backbone. Help us build this, help us grow the platform, and help us make this stronger so we can get more information out there faster on a wider basis. I'm working on some really cool automated tooling and custom tooling in the background for support systems that are going to help both myself, Zev, other creators, and all of us in the communities. So please support the network, and we will see you again soon. I'm Nick Perro. This is Banner and Backbone, Powerful Voices with Jenn Budd and Zev Shalev. Thank you both for joining me, and I will see everyone again here in the next couple of days. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Jenn.
Thank you.